Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation Mini. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Cameron Reigle.
And we have a very, 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 very important topic to discuss on this mini episode of the Kongversation, Cameron. And, you know, I had to bring it up somewhere. I had to do an episode about it because it is burning up all the news sites right now. An old render of Diddy Kong has been made slightly more furry.
This might be the most important thing DK Vine has ever covered.
It might be, considering how worthless the topics we usually cover are. So this is been a big story the past week or so. And it's one of those things where it is an interesting curiosity if you're a Donkey Kong nerd. If you're a fan of stock renders, it's very fascinating. I think a lot of news sites are blowing it out of proportion, and maybe I contributed to it a little bit with my own retweeting and whatnot. I think it's interesting. I think there could be some fire where there's smoke here, but we're going to get into all the points and counterpoints on this. So let me explain, first of all, what the hell we're talking about, because this episode will not age well. I can already tell you. It's like, wait, in 2021 they did an episode about what? So last weekend it was I think Saturday, April math is hard, Cameron. Was it April 17th, I think?
If it was last Saturday, yes.
Yes, well, we're recording this on a Friday night, so yeah, last Saturday. Twitter user Cosmo Brittany 73 pointed out that the Nintendo website for Japan had, in a deft sleight of hand, swapped out the stock Diddy Kong render that was used in their character biography section with a new render that's basically the same, but now has extra furry shenanigans, rendered fur, similar in style to what we saw in Tropical Freeze. But really, I mean, this is the same style of rendered fur that Rare's been doing for the Kongs and other furry characters since 1995. Donkey Kong Country 2 and Killer Instinct 2 were the first time they really perfected hair when it came to their pre-rendered models. So, you know, it's taken Nintendo a long time to kind of catch up to where Rare was in the mid-90s. But Tropical Freeze really had that nice looking fur at long last. And now they've gone and replaced an old render with this new fur. So a lot of people are talking. A lot of people are saying, "What does this mean? Does this mean that is this actual concrete proof that they are working on a new Donkey Kong game?" And it's a good sign. It's a good sign. It shows that there is active behind-the-scenes interest in consolidating and polishing the way the Kongs look. That's not a bad thing. But let's get into the history here. So this render that we're referring to, the original version of it, the pose, it originates from Mario Party DS. Diddy's got his left hand on his hip. He's got his right hand kind of flipping up his hat, the brow of his hat, pointed up. And this render has been used as his kind of go-to stock renders, or one of his go-to stock renders, at least when Diddy is referenced in the context of the Super Mario franchise.
We say this is a Mario Party DS render, but really that just happens to be the game it debuted with. Right. This has kind of been used as a general purpose, we need to represent Diddy Kong here, and it just happens to be a piece of stock artwork that doesn't have Diddy holding a baseball bat or a tennis racket.
Yeah.
And it could have I really don't know what the chicken egg situation is here. Like, it may have just been like this was a stock marketing render in the heap that just happened to debut with Mario Party DS.
Right.
But in any event, just call it Mario Party DS render because that's the path of least resistance.
Yeah, and Mario Party DS. I don't know how many of you are up on your handheld Mario Party release dates, but this was from 2007. So this render has been around for almost 14 years. And it's actually considered a Mario asset. I don't know, like, this is really getting into the weeds here, but if you'll notice, whenever they license anything for the Donkey Kong franchise, you won't really see renders from Smash Brothers or the Mario games on there. They're renders from Donkey Kong games. And the Donkey Kong calendar that was released last year for this year is a good example of that. You won't see K. Rool's render from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on there, but so they use his render from Jungle Climber, and they're all just like Donkey Kong series renders. This is considered a Mario asset. So whenever Diddy Kong needs to be represented through Mario branding or licensing, more or less you'll see this render. This is what people use. This is what Mario Kart Tour uses as Diddy's render, his character image. So this render has been around for a while, and we're seeing it more and more throughout the years. And
It put it into perspective when I thought about it this way. This render is older than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It predates Iron Man.
Right. So it's definitely well overdue for a visual upgrade. And Cameron, I invited you on this mini because you have the greatest perspective amongst the DK Vine staff when it comes to renders and the weird minutia separating renders. So I wanted to get your perspective on this, because this is not the first time we've seen them pull this stunt. I sound salty, like, oh, how dare you do this switcheroo? You could have created a new render, but you just added. It's actually a little bit different when you like lay them up, like superimpose them against each other. The way the fur billows off of his body now, it makes it a little bit bulkier. Like, essentially they're the same pose, but his tail and his legs are a little bit fluffier now. So it's
I mean, it looks a little bulkier by virtue of, like, hair has volume.
Yeah, and I don't know if they...
Really, when it's not just a tube overlaid over him in a flat texture.
Yeah, I don't know if they, like, gave him a tummy tuck or anything, or, like, adjusted his eyes. Like, it might just be the trick of the coloring, because it's darker. The texture is darker on this fur. It's more in line with what we saw in Tropical Freeze. So, anyway...
I do think they made it a bit more muted, less orangish, but again, this is rendered fur, and that was a flat textured shape previously.
Yeah. I think, like, Nintendo EAD went with the, like, furry shenanigan route. That's our catch-all term for this rendered fur that looks semi-realistic. And with Jungle Beat, they tried it with Donkey Kong and Jungle Beat, but it just looked like somebody took a hairdryer to Donkey Kong and blew him out, and it didn't look great in comparison to what Rare did.
Jungle Beat also kind of, like, we're talking about how like they set aside like certain renders for DK and Diddy, etc., that are like general purpose, and then specifically for Donkey Kong games, specifically for Smash Brothers. Jungle Beat kind of caused problems with that in the mid-aughts, which had, like, and this had ripple effects, like, for probably, like, over a decade afterward, where DK renders would be all over the place because essentially for a time, it was really indecisive whether or not Mario games and promotions would use the Jungle Beat version of Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And if you did that, you either had to make up a Jungle Beat style versions of the other Donkey Kong characters to go with him, because Donkey Kong was the only returning character in that game, or you'd have this weird mishmash if you didn't do that of styles, because DK was the only one that got that overhaul because he was the only one in the game.
Yeah, and that was before they actually separated the Donkey Kong license from the Super Mario license, which happened, I think, around 2017. I believe that's when. So now you don't necessarily get everything lock, stock, and barrel. If you license Mario, you have to license Donkey Kong separately. That's why we recently saw all the glut of Donkey Kong merchandise in stores like Box Lunch, because licensors were like, "Oh yeah, Donkey Kong, let's go in with Donkey Kong." Shot glasses and underwear. Really weird selections, but I guess they know their audience. Anyway, but yeah, this isn't the first time they've done this, and that's what a lot of these clickbait sites haven't brought up. And that's what I really wanted to bring up with this episode. Like, the level of surrealness really hit home for me when I saw an article about this on Comic Book Resources, which is essentially has basically devolved into just a kind of clickbaity site. There's some good writers on there, and then there's writers who are just trying to fill their quota, and they're like, a good example of a standard Comic Book Resources article is, why did the original Harriet Winslow leave Family Matters? Find out here. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, that was a recent article on Comic Book Resources. So, but they ran the Diddy Kong render story, which is, it's always weird for me whenever I see stuff in our world being broadcast by media outside of our world.
Yeah, this was really weird for me, so full disclosure for those who may not know, I used to run the DK Vine Tumblr account, and
you technically still
in my
do,
time
Cameron.
there,
you just Tumblr is just
it's full of Tumblr weeds right now.
Yeah.
And back when I ran that, scrutinizing Donkey Kong series renders to an absurd degree has kind of been the niche I carved out for myself, because for context, I at one point ran a 15-part series on how depictions of Diddy Kong had changed through the years.
Yes.
And when I started to see this article, I noticed the tweet with the pointing out that the render had changed, and my reaction was just sort of, oh hey, that's neat. So then afterward, putting it out of my mind and coming back to what seems like dozens upon dozens of news articles written by heavily trafficked sites calling attention to this change in render, it feels like those moments where Batman has somebody disappear on him mid-conversation when he's usually the one who does it. It's just that, so that's what that feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's awkward comedic beats in the Christopher Nolan movies. You're like, you didn't need a joke there.
It's weird to see somebody else reading into the tea leaves on this who isn't me, when I just kind of have this banal reaction to it.
Right. Yeah, so rewind the clock a little bit. I think this one is this render of Diddy Kong. And by the way, Mario Kart Tour had an update this week. They added the Sydney Tour to the game. Now Donkey and Diddy can go to Australia, mate. And they can drive through the Sydney Opera House, because why not? But that's actually part of the track. But Diddy Kong's render, I checked, it was not updated in Mario Kart Tour. It's still the quote-unquote Mario Party DS render. And I had a dream about this fucking render, Cameron, the other night. It was more of a nightmare. I dreamt I logged into Mario Kart Tour to get my like daily reward for logging in, and I dreamt that I was greeted by a cutscene of I guess it was the old Diddy Kong render knifing another monkey and cutting off his fur and wearing that fur as a suit to explain why the render changed. And this was right before the update. And so it was weird that morning.
This raises dark questions about where he got those extra fingers.
So yeah, that morning I was just in a weird headspace because I had this very vivid image of Diddy filleting another monkey, and but no, the render's the same. But it's often paired with this stock Donkey Kong render. It's also used in the context of the Mario series, but you'll also see it in weird places like Target. I was in Target last weekend, and this render of Donkey Kong is seen in like the Nintendo section, like Nintendo accessories, and then there's this render of Donkey Kong to promote Nintendo accessories, and that render first appeared in Fortune Street. Of all places, and it's what I call the fellatio render of Donkey Kong. You know which render I'm talking about, Cameron?
I do, but you did have to explain it to me because not knowing what it looks like, you would think, well, Donkey Kong fellatio render, that seems like an odd thing to be in Target.
So it's the render of Donkey Kong from Fortune Street, but it appeared several times after that. He's got his right arm up in the air, and his lips are pursed just so he's got his fist near his mouth, but it looks like he's pantomiming a certain act that I just referenced, and I call it the fellatio render because once you see it, you can't unsee it. This render was replaced and revamped. And the new render for that first appeared in Super Mario Party just the other year, the new Mario Party iteration for the Switch, where they added furry shenanigans to it. They upgraded the fur, and they finally shut his damn mouth. So now Donkey Kong isn't, looking like he's some sort of lewd weirdo in the alleyway. But this is also what his Super Mario amiibo is based on. So, and that's what now appears in Mario Kart Tour. So we had the furry shenanigan Donkey Kong in Mario Kart Tour, but the Diddy Kong one was a render from 2007, way before they started implementing the furry shenanigans.
Yeah, it's kind of I appreciate that Nintendo is doing this, upcycling its renders with newer technology as it goes, specifically so you don't end up with situations like this in this transitionary period where they're going from one to the other. Because eventually you reach a certain point because these stock renders of the Mario Cast and the DK Cast, like it does happen to the Mario Cast too, where artwork sticks around in the like licensee rotation of assets long past its expiration date. Mm-hmm. Something that kind of cropped up in a conversation recently with the Karate Joey, who was in the DK Vine community. She pointed out that she calls has a name for certain stock renders and calls them Campbell soup renders, because they're the kind of things that end up on like just random licensed crap like Campbell soup cans, yeah, or like just any number of things. And some of them will date back to like early GameCube, like a telltale sign of something like being from the early to mid like 2000s is that when they first started making these renders early on, the Mario characters and DK's cast, who ended up in them by extension, would have these like shadows that are just pure stark black, and it would have the result of making things like look really lifeless and pale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of in the fervor of this in the story about like, ooh, did he got a new render? Does this mean they're doing something with Donkey Kong? Is there a new Donkey Kong game? It's, well, no, they do this exact same thing with the Mario cast all the time. I can pull out the exact same thing happening with artwork of Peach or Yoshi.
I understand, like, the desire to rush to read tea leaves and say, well, this surely means something. And it might, like, as I said on Twitter, this could very well mean that, you know, they are making a new Donkey Kong game, and they've decided now's the time for them to upgrade some of these stock renders that are still floating around with the same furry technology that's being implemented with this game. So we want our renders to be consistent, especially with the new glut of renders that are, you know, going to be coming out with Donkey Kong whatever for the Switch. And I think that's very plausible. We just can't make a definitive leap from just seeing this to that. It's definitely good that they have the interest of upgrading the render. It means Diddy's still going to be around for years to come, right? If there's like, Diddy is still definitely a priority for them. They're not just going to let this render, these old renders stand and not do anything with them. It's not, you know.
Yeah, like, to be clear, this is, no matter how you slice it, good news. Like, this is a good thing they're doing, and it means something, but it doesn't necessarily mean, like, Diddy's going to be in another game, and this is how they're going to look, and they wouldn't have done this if they didn't need to make a new render. No, this is a good thing to do, if you plan to use Diddy in stuff actively. Right.
A good, I think, thing to hold it up against is Chunky Kong. Why am I bringing up Chunky Kong? Well, Cameron, it's because one of the reasons you don't see people just pulling out Chunky Kong and using Chunky Kong and things is because Chunky Kong has no pre-existing model render. He was not one of the Kongs redesigned back in like the post Rare early to mid buyout era when all the Kongs got these standardized designs. Funky became his like DKC3 mechanic, Persona full time, just a little bit less dirty. Candy was redesigned. This around this time, you know, Tiny hit puberty and became a teenager. But everybody got models up through Lanky Kong. Chunky did not. And
the most prominent role Chunky has had since, I think, Donkey Kong Country 3 Game Boy Advance is his artwork being used to represent dismissing a spirit in Smash Ultimate. The one thing Chunky has been used for is demonstrating how to get rid of Chunky.
Right. And you'll notice, like, in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, you know, whenever there is a more modern asset to be used, they use it. So, like, that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate technically is the first time in years we've seen Chunky and Swanky and Kitty, but they, of course, have to use a rare error render that's, at least over 20 years old, if not more. So, but whenever they can, they will use, 'cause I think Tiny Kong is the exception there. They use younger Tiny Kong in that, but maybe that's just to keep it consistent with like Chunky and everyone. But anyway, my point is that to see them continually modernizing renders like Diddy Kong is good because it keeps them above water so they don't fall underneath the waves like Chunky Kong has, where Chunky is just stuck with these 22-year-old renders, and there's really no interest in using him, especially because they would have to create a new art assets all together for him. So,
and also I'm just thankful for the brand consistency as somebody who grinds their teeth a little bit over, say, like the Czech specific Donkey Kong toy having Tropical Freeze branding, but having a box covered in Jungle Beat renders.
Right. I know, like, was Retro responsible for the Tropical Freeze renders, or did Nintendo do those in-house? Do we know anything about that, or is that one of those open mysteries?
I personally do not know. It does not seem like those renders see much use outside of specifically Tropical Freeze, and they're unlikely to ever again now that Donkey Kong's had that revised nose.
Yes.
In every game since, including the Switch version of Tropical Freeze.
Yeah. They give him a nose job. So, but like, let's assume that Retro did do those renders, right? So this shows us that now Nintendo internally has access to the same technology that Retro used, or maybe technology is putting too fanciful a term on it. The same techniques that Retro used. And so they now can easily, or I don't know how easy the process is, but they can do it. They can do the furry shenanigans in-house, which, we've already seen, not just with the fellatio render of Donkey Kong, but, there was another render too, the stupid one of him. This is actually another recent example. The stupid render of him giving a thumbs up.
I'm glad you phrased it that way. Yeah, they updated this render, and this always stuck out to me because the original version of this render, like, it's from the GameCube era, and it's just such a stiff, awkward pose for Donkey Kong to make, but this render was everywhere. Like it just, if Donkey Kong appeared on anything, like, chances, like, outside of his normal wheelhouse, like, chances are it was this artwork. Like, this was used, I think, even to promote, like, Jungle Climber for a while, or just, like, it was the image you'd throw on a website if you had news about Donkey Kong. But it always just seemed like I'd call it like the pose Donkey Kong would make if he was like an athlete endorsing a product that he wasn't really that enthused about and just had to fake his way through it.
Right. This is not him endorsing Burning DK, which is a passion product of his. This is him, like, I don't know, endorsing. This is him doing, like, community service endorsements, like, oh, he was pulled over for drunk driving, so now he has to do these PSAs. He's like, I'm Donkey Kong and I approve this. Yeah, my problem with this render, and I don't even know what game it's from, like, Jungle Climber maybe, but yeah, it looks like it could be from, like, one of the lesser Mario parties, for, like, Mario Party 4. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. And the weird thing is, it's very associated with Jungle Climber, but they put out original artwork for Jungle Climber, and this DK model looks nothing like the one they used for Jungle Climber.
Yeah, the Jungle,
like, on the box art.
The Jungle Climber, and really Payon renders for Jungle Climber in general, really try to go for that rare style. So you didn't see Donkey Kong doing the toothy grin all that often.
They're also just, like, generally softer. Like, I think they have a higher polygon count than this thing does.
Yeah.
This original version of this.
Yeah, my problem with this is the thumb. The thumb looks atrocious. I'm not even gonna, like, bring up that it resembles some sort of phallic shape, but it doesn't look natural. It looks like it's some sort of breadstick that you'll get at Olive Garden. I don't even know what this is. It's not
Donkey Kong's hands had, like, real rough years in the GameCube era, like, because they can't avoid, like, the lighting and, like, color palette they chose. They always look very pale.
Yeah.
And the, like, joint shapes always look, like, very weird. Like, there's like, I'm sure you'll know when I mention it, like, the Jungle Beat render that has DK clapping his hands, but it's posed in a specific way where he just looks like he's, like, got 5 giant sausages splaying out from his wrists.
Right. And no offense to anyone who does have 5 giant sausages splayed from their wrist. We're all people here, but they upgraded this awful render finally. Although I'm not sure why they did it, but this is post Tropical Freeze for Switch nose job Donkey Kong. He's got the new nose, and he's got furry shenanigans on the render now. And thankfully, the hands look like hands. The thumb looks like a thumb. What did they use this for? I like the reference image says vote behind Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I think it was like a web poll that just happened to pull this render out, because I think it's again in the same like ambiguous Nintendo stockpile of miscellaneous Donkey Kong assets that you can just pull out and put on something, without it having to have any kind of connotation. And it is a very it kind of shows like how much of a difference like the advances in rendering technology and level of detail make, because the pose is still really super awkward, but I do think the actual artwork it results in is 100 times more appealing.
For sure. And I think this shows too that, you know, they probably have been sitting on this upgraded Diddy Kong render for a while now, and they just they might have just updated the Japanese website with it. But like this weird one-off thumbs up Donkey Kong render, we haven't seen this used really anywhere, but they have it. And so when they had to pull it out, they used it for this. So, you know, I don't think we can really make any grand conclusions from this, but as we said, it's still good news. Doesn't preclude anything, and but it doesn't mean anything either.
I think the best news to take from this, like unambiguously like probably true part of this, is that I think we're finally starting to see the death of the bifurcation between Donkey Kong games coming out that have the Kongs with detailed like rendered fur, and then other games that don't, and this constant swap back and forth between the like level of quality and detail. Right. Because this is kind of establishing like even the Donkey Kong artwork that we use for random throwaway promotions on Nintendo.com will have the fancy fur technology. Right, yeah. It basically just gets us back to where we were before Mario Kart 64 ruined everything. So, you know, that's good. And, you know, it does, I think, provide, if anything, a little bit of evidence that, you know, everything for Donkey Kong is now internal at Nintendo EPD, and that, you know, when he does appear in cameo games, is going to trickle down from that. But there's not going to be this thing where like all of the core Donkey Kong assets are like the really superior Donkey Kong assets. They're at Retro Studios, and Nintendo is just dealing with the scraps and odds and ends from the last 20 years. It's a weird feeling to say, like, I like seeing these renders and saying, like, knowing that they are going to be like the benchmark Mario renders from here on out for the foreseeable future anyway. And it's weird to finally think to myself, like, yeah, I would be okay if they just used those in the mainline Donkey Kong game as is with no changes. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's our take on it. Sorry to disappoint if we disappointed, but hey, you know, that's just the way it is. Tune in next time as we explain why Harriet Winslow was replaced in Season 9 of Family Matters.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico. The Kongversation. The Kongversation.
Mini version. It's more trivial than it normally is. And the feature isn't as long.
She didn't want to do the show anymore.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.